Her web connects them all. Hey guys, it's Chris, and in today's video, I'm talking about Madam Web. Let's get into it. Madam Web follows the origin story of Cassandra Webb as she confronts her past and tries to save 3 young women from Ezekiel Sims. Ezekiel Sims, 2003, yeah, Sims, yeah, that was popular back in the 2000s. Ezekiel wants to kill them before they become spider women and kill him in the future. He learns this from a vision of the future. First, the biggest positive of the film, and there's really only one positive throughout this whole movie, and that's Dakota Johnson as Madam Web. I think Johnson does a really good job as Madam Web. You know, it's not the best adaptation of Madam Web. I definitely give that to Spider-Man 1994. That had Madam Web, and I think that's the best adaptation of Madam Web. But what Dakota Johnson has to work with, I still think she does a good job as Madam Web. Once she starts to use her powers right and learns more about her past, she actually becomes an interesting character. Madam Web has always been a complex character in the comic books and the cartoons, but Madam Web simplifies her. All her abilities are explained in the movie, throughout the movie, so you don't really have to read 50 different Spider-Man comic books to understand Madam Web. Another thing I thought was interesting is that she has visions of the future. And when they said visions of the future, that reminded me a lot of Final Destination. In Final Destination, they have visions of the future, like a glimpse of the future, and it's like, this is going to happen eventually. And kind of the same thing in Madam Web, you know, she has visions of the future. She gets little glimpses of the future, and eventually it does happen. In Final Destination, at the end of each vision, the camera pulls out of the eyeball, where in Madam Web, when she has a vision, it goes right into her eye. So, like I said, that definitely reminded me a lot of Final Destination. Like, you know, she could have just had a vision in her mind or something, but it goes into her eye, and it's this, like, massive web, and she gets little hints and clues and little visions of what's going to happen eventually in the future. So I definitely like that Final Destination reference. And in Final Destination, they do call them premonitions, but they do name drop visions every once in a while. Another concept I liked, Madam Web can use the web to be in more than one place at the same time. You know, she does use this during the final act, you know, when each 3 of the girls are hanging, essentially hanging from their death, about to fall to their death. She uses that where, you know, she can be over here, I can save this one, and I can save her. So, like I said earlier in the video, they simplified her, you know, they explain all her abilities, and they don't overcomplicate her. You know, she's complex, but it's easy to follow if you don't know a ton about Madam Web. Madam Web is also the only person that can change the future. So Ezekiel Sims, he wants to change his future. You know, he doesn't want to be killed by the 3 spider women, but he doesn't have that ability. He can't do it. You know, he does die in the end of the movie, but he cannot change the future. Madam Web is the only one that can change the future. G Fuel break. Good. Shake it a little more. Jesus, you're probably thinking half of this video is just him talking about Madam Web, but that's literally the only positive of the movie, Dakota Johnson as Madam Web. Out of all the female characters, Madam Web is the most enticing. You know, even in the end, she goes blind, and she does get her chair, because in the comic books or in the cartoon, she has a chair, and it's like a massive spider web behind her, and it connects all the Spider-Verse. But in this, she doesn't get that chair. She just kind of gets like a wheelchair. You know, she's paralyzed. She's blind and paralyzed. But she does get a chair. Unfortunately, it's not a chair that connects all the Spider-Verse. But, you know, at least they made her blind, because that's how she is in the comic books. Even though it doesn't happen until the end of the movie. Next, the biggest complaint. The whole movie that's not Madam Web. The script is bad. Ezekiel Sims is the most uninteresting villain in the whole Spider-Man franchise. And there's been some doozies, but he's just the most uninteresting one out of all of them. His suit looks like a dollar store Spider-Man suit. You know that meme where it's like, Mom, I want Spider-Man. Yeah, we have Spider-Man at home. That's Ezekiel Sims. That's how bad his suit is. It's like a knockoff brand. It's like a cosplayer that didn't actually spend any money on the suit. It just looks bad. It looks like they just went into the dollar store and was like, hey, I need a Spider-Man suit. We gotcha. The CGI looks like from 2003 and not in a good way. You know, some movies from the 2000s look better than this movie. It's pretty sad how movies from the 2000s, the CGI looks better than a movie from 2024. It's like Transformers Rise of the Beast all over again. That CGI looks worse than CGI from 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it just baffles me that the CGI is bad in this one. It literally looks like it's from 2003. And you know, some movies did have some pretty good CGI in the 2000s, but this one, just awful. Not good CGI. And like I say in a lot of my videos, I'm a big CGI guy, and this one was just not good, to say the least. The ending is the best part, and even the ending is ruined by awful CGI or shoddy CGI. Like, they couldn't even get the ending right. The girls are running through an exploding warehouse where there's fireworks going off. Firework is shot into a helicopter and it crashes into a Pepsi Cola sign. And, you know, that would be cool and a nice set piece, but because of the shoddy CGI, it's just ruined. The plot is uninspired and uninteresting. Like, they could have done something cool with it, but it's just butchered by an awful script. So the plot is nothing to go home about. Like I said, the biggest positive of this movie is Dakota Johnson as Madam Web. And she doesn't even really watch superhero movies. She couldn't even name 3 of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. The other female leads are there just to look pretty and tease a Spider-Woman team in the future. You know, that's cool and all, but maybe actually show us them a lot more in costume. The suits are comic book accurate, but I just wish we saw them for more than 5 minutes. And you know, that's being generous. I think it was maybe 3 minutes max we saw them. Which even sucked too is that when we see the 3 Spider women, you know, Julia, Anya, and Maddie, when we even see them, it's a vision of the future. So we don't actually even see them suit up in the present day. We see them suit up in a vision. Like, wow, that was just awful. You know, it's like, oh, here's a little glimpse of the future, you know? Like, we'll show you what might happen eventually. And because this was panned by critics and audience didn't really like it very much, and it has a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, we might not see Madam Web 2, but that's fine with me. If this is how they're going to treat Madam Web, I hope they don't do a second one. Maybe we could see these Spider Women in like another Spider-Man movie where they do cameos, but I'm not holding my breath for a Madam Web 2. Madam Web shows that Sony needs better directions to their movies without Spider-Man. Some of the Sony Cinematic Universe or whatever, you know, the Venom movies are really good. Morbius, I did not like, and Madam Web, I mean, it's not part of that Sony universe. It's in its own universe. I can understand why now, because it wasn't very good. Madam Web is forgettable and awful. I mean, what else can I really say about it? I've been butchering this whole movie since I started filming this review, and it's like, well, that's how I feel. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I feel like they just butchered Madam Web. Madam Web is caught in a web, slowly fading out of existence. I wish I had a vision of the future telling me not to watch this Abomination. That's how bad it was. I obviously watched and read reviews about it, so I knew it was going to be terrible, but actually watching it for myself, I was like, yeah, this is awful. This is bad. Even a big Spider-Man fan hates it. Madam Web, or even Morbius, is a perfect example why these movies can't work without Spider-Man. Sony is re-releasing all 8 live-action Spider-Man movies in theaters starting April 15th. Every Monday in order. They're definitely hurting for money after this stain on the Spider-Man franchise. Like, that should tell you enough about Madam Web. Alright, that was me talking about Madam Web. Have you seen the movie? Let me know down in the comments or direct message me on Facebook, Twitter, wherever. IG. I'm Spider-ManChris, and I'll see you in the next one.